We are about to publish a new book named Hebrew Ancestry. Hebrew Ancestry is a development, a rewriting of a previous work of ours known as Lost Israelite Identity. This work is very important. It concerns the Hebraic origin, the Hebrew origin, Hebrew ancestry of a large number of peoples amongst Western nations. We hold that the lost 10 tribes are now to be found amongst Western peoples. Originally the 12 tribes of Israel, are split into two separate kingdoms. The northern kingdom, comprised of 10 tribes, was taken into exile by the Assyrians, and they lost consciousness of their identity. They were lost. In other words, they were lost knowledge of who they were in that sense. But they remained as concrete entities, as physical entities. Their descendants are now to be found amongst Western peoples. From the Middle East, they had moved or been moved, transported or moved of their own accord after achieving their independence. They had moved from the East to the West, and they had settled in amongst Western nations and established national groupings of their own. And these national groupings of Israelites, the people of Israel descent, are especially important amongst nations known as Celts to conventional historical writings. Celts, that is what they're called now usually. In other words, peoples who belong to Celtic Civilization. They did not call themselves Celts, at least as far as we know. That is a Roman term that was applied to a portion of them, but they did call themselves Iberi or Hiberi, which is another form of the name Hebrew. That is what they call themselves, and that is what they are. They were Hebrews, they were descendants of Israel. And this book will prove it, as all of our works, our organisation, Britain Hebrew Nations, works to do. We work to prove it, and we do prove it. We research it, we have information concerning it, and we get this information. Sometimes other people have written on the same subject, and we take information from them, and we acknowledge our sources, or we research the primary sources and archaeological findings, and also biblical and rabbinical evidence of our own, and we often come up with the new original findings on our own accord. We have some merits of our own as well. We do what we can. We do research and we do a revelation. We bring the knowledge of these findings to the general public, and we also work towards reconciliation between the Jewish people, that is Judah, and the 10 tribes of Israel. These are our three major principles: research, revelation, and reconciliation. And one aspect of our work is revealing knowledge of what we have done to the public, and we're doing this through a new work that we are going to publish, God willing, very soon. This will take its place alongside our other publications that also, each and every one of them in its own way, reveals and explores different aspects of this study of these subjects. And the Bible in 2 Kings 17 proved that most of the ancient Hebrews were taken away by the Assyrians. The Bible is really emphatic on this. It says this in several places. Most of the Israelite tribes disappeared. Those who remained became the ancestors of the Jewish people. But the majority were taken away. They were taken away to different sections of the Assyrian Empire, and they lost the consciousness of their identity. But the prophets speak of them. Jeremiah chapters 30, 31, Hosea chapters 1 to 3, most of Isaiah, much of Amos, and so on. Also in Talmudic and rabbinical sources they are spoken of. And not only were they taken away and disappeared, but in the future they will have their ancestry made known to them, and they will return and once again be acknowledged as the children of Israel, and they will resettle in the greater land of Israel that stretches from the Nile to the Euphrates. Before their return, however, Scripture tells us they will be fulfilling an important role in human history. They will have a task of their own to play. They have to do things. They have to liberate mankind. They have to elevate mankind. That is what they had to do, and that is what they will have done, and they are doing. And therefore, to have done this, they will have to have had certain traits. They will have to have been very important and very numerous. They have to have been blessed to have the means whereby to do these things. And these things are also spoken about by the Scripture. Scripture says also that they will be so blessed, that they will be the greatest and mightiest and strongest nations in the earth. They will be the most wealthy and the most far expanding, and it gives indeed details concerning what characteristics they will have, And all these characteristics are found to have been felt amongst Western nations. And we find these people amongst Western nations, especially amongst the peoples of the so-called English-speaking peoples in the island of Britain, in Wales, Scotland, England, and also in Ireland and in Ulster, and also in Canada and in the USA and in Australia and New Zealand. We also find the descendants of Israelites amongst the French, amongst the Swiss, amongst the Belgians, the Dutch, the Danish, Norwegians, Swedish and Finnish. And here and there amongst other nations as well, but the majority of them are among those nations that we have mentioned. And we prove it. And this is what we are about, and this is what we do. So this Hebrew ancestry is one step, is one more stage in showing this proof. And this book, Hebrew Ancestry, is divided into 3 separate sections. Each section could have become, at one stage we did consider making each section a separate book in its own right, but now we have decided not to keep it as it was, but to add to it, to update it, and to change it somewhat in different sections of it. As we said, 3 sections. The first section of Hebrew Ancestry describes how the Israelite nations, the Israelites, were exiled. They were taken different sections of the Syrian Empire. In the Syrian Empire, they became identifiable as the Cimmerians and the Scythians and the Guti, or later the Goths, later known as the Goths. And these 3 sections are mentioned in the Syrian inscriptions, and we show how in effect they were found in areas where the Israelite nations were exiled to, and that they identified with the Israelite nations, and especially the Cimmerians. Cimmerians were called by the Assyrians named Amaru, which was another name in those times for people from the land of Israel. And there are other proofs proving them to have been from the land of Israel. And these peoples moved to the north and to the west. The Cimmerians especially became important in establishing different entities amongst those peoples who later gave rise to Celtic civilization. They were a catalyst in this movement of Celtic culture. And we show how the physical descendants of these nations are to be found amongst Western peoples of Celtic culture. And this is a proof in its own right that these peoples are descended from Israel. The second part of Hebrew ancestry goes into a little bit more detail of what we have said. It also brings somewhat of different aspects that have a pertinence to this. We show how the original Hebrews, where they came from Mesopotamia. Abraham was the first Hebrew, and he gave his name to his descendants. His descendants were known as Hebrews. Hebrew was also a name that the Celtic people of Celtic culture in the West used for themselves. They kept this name. They also kept different aspects of Hebrew civilization they had picked up, that they had retained from before the time of their exile. And we show how these aspects of Hebrew civilization were pertinent to them and had obtained to them. We show how the Israelites, before coming to the land of Israel, had been in Egypt. They had been part of the Hyksos rulership, or the whole complex of Hyksos rulership that then existed, or the shepherd kings that ruled over Egypt. The Israelites were associated with them, were even part of them. And afterwards they had been enslaved by the Egyptians, had freed themselves from Egyptian slavery. That is, Moses, directed by God, had led them out of Egypt, and they'd come into the land of Canaan. In the land of Canaan, they had established themselves, they had ruled, controlled the area from the Nile, from the river Nile to the Euphrates. They had ruled over all of that area, and some portions of the area of this whole expanse of land. They had been the majority, and others they had been a minority, but they had been there, and they had been the dominant element for a good significant length of time. And they had picked up aspects of the cultures over which they had ruled, and also imparted aspects of their own rulership to these peoples. And we can learn from what they were and how they were. We can also show that these same traits that characterized them then were to be carried on with them when they went to the West and they became part of Celtic civilization. We also show how the Israelites, when they were taken away by the Assyrians, used the Philistines and the Phoenicians. The Philistines were in the southeast west of Israel, but they were connected to the island of Cyprus and also of Crete. They were part of Minoan civilization, and they had a whole maritime complex of ships and missions and trade and cultural settlements and so on. So too did the Phoenicians. The Phoenicians lived on the coast of what is now Lebanon, also northern Israel, and in parts of Syria, and they had a widespread complex of trades and ships and exploration, and even Israelite tribes were part of this. The tribe of Dan, the tribe of Asher, tribe of Zebulun, other Israelite tribes, possibly also Manasseh, and Dan participated in these Phoenician enterprises and were identified with the Phoenicians. But when the Assyrians conquered the Israelites, they enlisted, as if to say, Phoenicians and Philistines, non-Israelite Phoenicians and Philistines, enlisted them in transporting and taking Israelite captives overseas and resettling them elsewhere. A portion of them were resettled in Spain, and we trace this through archaeology, through different epigraphic evidence, historical writings and so on. We show how this took place, and we prove it, and it's even in effect acknowledged at an academic level that such an event took place. Only there's the specific identifications are not made, but they are there. Show how these people were Israelites, where they were taken from, what happened to them, and after about 2 centuries, those in Spain moved out. They moved to Ireland, and they moved to Gaul, that is France, and they moved to the British Isles, elsewhere in Britain, and they also became part of the Celtic culture. They teamed up, they linked up with other Israelites who were also Celtics, who together with the Cimmerian masses, had moved to the west. And so we show how everything ties up, and how Israelites moved from the east to the west, and what became of them, how it happened. We prove it. We prove it from archaeology. We prove it from legends, and we prove it from every source available. And another thing which this book concentrates upon in the third part of Hebrew ancestry, we show from legends or conventional accounts of historical writings from Ireland, from Wales, and from Scotland, how what we have said is confirmed by tradition of these peoples in the West, how they in effect affirm our understanding of the ancestors having come from the land of Israel, and what happened to them and how they came to be where they were. This book is very important, and it's also interesting and exciting. And I hope you will take an interest in it. Go to our websites and you will find more details. Thank you. May the Lord of Israel bless all of you.